Out of Welcome, everyone. Out of habit, I almost said good morning because I'm so used to saying that for coffee and conversation. But welcome to a special Lunch and Learn event. We have a lot of people. I can see more people joining us. So we'll wait maybe just another minute or two, and then we will go ahead and get started. We do have a lot of great content and wonderful presenters to hear from. So we will not keep you waiting for long. Perfect. I think we have everybody in for now. I'm sure we'll have some more people joining us. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jen Woodford. I'm part of the team here at Rochester Area Foundation, and we are so excited to have you all joining us today if you're in Rochester, it's actually a sunny day. Still cool outside, but at least there's some nice sunshine to brighten your spirits, hopefully. But thank you for joining us for this Lunch and Learn today to learn more about how you can take steps to engage in some thoughtful end-of-life planning. We know this can be a very sensitive topic for a wide variety of reasons, and we're grateful that you're here today and know that you will hear things that will help you as you make some of your own future plans. Little housekeeping, as we always do, we ask that if you are not the current presenter that you stay muted so that we can hear our presenters. We do encourage questions though. And so we have Ellen Heggie from our staff will be monitoring the chat. We encourage you to put any questions that you have in there, and we should have some time even for a little question and answer at the end. So please, as you're thinking of things, drop the questions into the chat and we'll bring those through when we have time at the end. We do have a wonderful full slate of speakers today, so we will go ahead and get started. Our first speaker today, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Edward Creagan, a cancer specialist who practiced at Mayo Clinic for more than 40 years. More than 40 Minnesota winters until he transitioned into the orbit of digital health in 2018. Dr. Creagan was the first Mayo Clinic consultant board certified in hospice and palliative medicine. He was named Outstanding Educator from Mayo Clinic School of Continuing Medical Education and has received the Distinguished Mayo Clinician Award, Mayo Clinic's highest honor. Dr. Creagan also completed an elected term as president of the Mayo staff. Dr. Creagan received the Ellis Island Medal of Honor for contributions of descendants of immigrants and is the author of over 500 scientific papers and has given more than 1,000 presentations throughout the world. Dr. Creagan has received the International Toastmasters Award for speaking skills.
I bought some of those light bulbs.
And was one of the, sorry about that, and was one of the founders of the public speaking program at the Mayo School of Medicine. Dr. Creagan is the author of the triple award-winning book, How to Not Be My Patient, A Physician's Secrets for Staying Healthy and Surviving Any Diagnosis. And his book about death and dying is titled Farewell, and provides answers to the vital end-of-life questions patients and families ask. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ed, who will share with us some insights on navigating what can be incredibly stressful times. Welcome, Dr. Ed.
Jen, thank you. This is a real gift to be here. And it's also an honor to share some information with our listeners because we're all in the same boat. And the gift that you all give to me is to listen to Starla and Lori and Jen talking about some very complex issues. So let me switch to our share function. And just bear with me for a second here. All right. And we'll go to share. Okay. And Share, share. Okay. Enter. Let me screen.
Can see your screen, Dr. Ed, so that's good
Uh,
news.
Okay, can you see it? Okay.
We can, yep.
And I'm just looking for the slideshow. Share, okay. Let's do this. Share. Let's hit share again. And whoa.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think you just went on the top there where it says slideshow. Kind of-
Yes,
Just,
that's I'm unable to see.
oh, it's right above crucial. The word crucial there. You had review, but then you go over two more.
Oh, here we go. Okay,
Mhm.
so
If you
let's-
just go over two more, well, now you're like three, you go over to the left, you can see slideshow. 1, 2, 3, 4, over from where you are now.
okay. Let's go back, share. All right. And I'm just not seeing that top bar. Oh, here it is. Okay, here we go. Slideshow, setup slideshow. Okay. From the beginning. Okay, how is that? Can anybody see that?
So, and what we are seeing is just still that first slide. I don't know if it's frozen. If you use your maybe even just from this screen, can you use your up down arrows to change this
Okay, let's see.
this slide?
Oh, here we go. Is it advancing for you all?
It is not.
Okay, let's do this. So there's no advance. Okay. Let me go.
Share again.
This share. Okay. Slideshow from the beginning.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not changing on our end now.
Okay, let me do this. Let me get out of this function here.
Okay, let's and see if we can go back in.
Okay, so we'll okay this. Let's open the slide. Okay, the slide deck. Now let's go to slideshow. Slideshow. Set up slideshow. Speaker. Boom. This is bizarre, folks. Can you all see anything that I have on the screen?
We can't right now. Now we're just seeing each other's smiling faces.
All right, tell you what, let me get out of the program completely. All right, let's do this. I'm going to exit. I'm going to leave the meeting. Okay.
Oh, Judy.
We
you
do,
wanna-
yeah, we do have his slides though too. If you know what I mean, that I could always share them too.
Perfect. Do you perhaps, I'm just trying to think if we want to get started, if you would want to maybe get started
Sure,
and then we can come back to Dr. Cragen when he comes back in?
certainly, sure, that makes sense. Okay.
Sorry, now you have to find, there we go.
Okay. All right. So, This topic is near and dear to me because I have been an estate planning attorney for about 30 years now. Just covering this topic, from really all different perspectives, even my own, right? 30 years ago, thinking, like, oh, 30 is old when I started. so so anyway, so I'd like to share this information with you because what people don't really understand about estate planning is that we have to think about really what's the structure that we're dealing with. A lot of people obviously are thinking of this from the emotional standpoint of it. And then we're going to hear from Dr. Cregan, about all the healthcare issues surrounding it. But I'm here just to familiarize you with the legal aspect of it. And truthfully, it is all about who has liability for making such decisions for you in the event you're incapacitated or upon your passing. So let me get the other. All right. So these are our main estate planning goals. Whenever we're talking about an estate plan, is we want to minimize stress for the family in the event you become incapacitated. We want to minimize expenses and taxes. And truthfully, almost everyone I talk to says they want to make it easier on the family. Truthfully, I'd say probably 95% of people I talk to think that that is a very important goal for them. But what is really, really critical, in my opinion, doing this all these years, is having documents in place in the event you're incapacitated. Because incapacitation is honestly is the most stressful thing, right? When you have a family member who's become incapacitated, and now who's going to take care of their bills, how are healthcare decisions going to be made for them? You're in this very high stress situation already, and now you have this like additional layer of stress for handling all of these decisions. So in my opinion, the power of attorney and the healthcare directive are the most important documents you can have. Honestly, upon your passing, there's a lot of things that we can do to make it easier, but these two things are so easy to put together and they can make a world of difference to your family. So I'm going to just tell you, what a power of attorney is. It's really think of it as handling kind of the legal and financial aspects of your life if you're incapacitated. So if you don't have a power of attorney in place and we need, bills to be paid or legal decisions to be made, we're going to have to go to a court and the judge is going to appoint someone who has that authority. So we really don't want to go through all that stress and expense of that. And this is a very standard document. So we want to be thinking about having that. The one thing that I want everyone to really have an appreciation for, though, is that it grants very broad powers to the person you are appointing. So you have to trust them. I mean, they could literally clear out your bank account the next day. Very obvious difference between the power of attorney and the healthcare directive is one is for finances and one is for healthcare, but the other more subtle difference. Power of attorney is effective the day you sign it. So it's great to have it in place in the event you're incapacitated, but can also be used even if you have capacity. So just want you to be really appreciate the fact that this has to be a person that you trust. And then many people think that that it goes on after your death, but no, it ceases at death. Now, I know Dr. Cregan is going to talk more about the healthcare directive, so he'll be going into obviously the more medical parts of it. But what I really want you to appreciate about the medical, either call it a medical power of attorney, in Minnesota we call it a healthcare directive. It's really all about who has liability for making healthcare decisions. If you don't have this in place, your healthcare provider is not going to make decisions for you. And they are kind of hamstrung on who they can trust to make decisions on behalf of an incapacitated patient. So just want you to really think about if you're incapacitated, who can make those decisions. Why Mayo and most physicians are very keen on having you have this document in place is because it makes it so much easier for them. If you don't have it in place, once again, family has to go to court. family has to get someone appointed to have this authority to make these decisions. So can you imagine the stress level? You're incapacitated, and now everybody's got to go through the expense and stress of going to court. It's just so unpleasant. And there are so many ways to make a healthcare directive. You can just get one, from your healthcare provider. You can, get one from an attorney. You can even, get them online. We have some, statutory requirements, and you'll be able to do this. So it's really, really important to do it. But also, what I think we'll be talking about, from the medical side of it, is that you're really just communicating your preferences in that document. This is not a contract. No one has to just look at that document and say, oh, this is what she wanted, so now we have to do it. No, you're just providing direction to that person. And so hopefully you've appointed a trustworthy person who will follow your wishes. So I did, state in here, the reasons, the benefits of having it. So I won't read those out loud. But, also, Dr. Cregan will tell you he can't share your medical records with anyone unless you have authorized that. So the medical directive can authorize, sharing of your medical record. We can get as specific as you want in those, in the healthcare directive regarding your wishes. I find that some healthcare people are familiar with the system, sometimes can get very specific because they've been in these situations and they want this and they don't want that. But I do sometimes find that getting too specific can be, one, overwhelming. The Mayo healthcare directive can be overwhelming to people because that form is like, do you want this? Do you want that? And some people just get completely bogged down in the details. Just really appoint someone. Even if you haven't made all those decisions, appoint someone and then have those conversations with the person you've appointed. And you can change your mind about things too. Sometimes there's a paralysis of people not getting it done because, they want it to be perfect. It's really most important to get it done. And also, if you have, a preference about burial instructions, or if you are, really feel positive about organ donation, or you feel like you would not want to be an organ donor, you need to let your healthcare agent know that. So what is on your driver's license is really more of like a registry, like you're really saying you want to be an organ donor. So if you have changed your mind, I would recommend that you change it on your driver's license. But really, who has liability for making that commitment to donate your organs is really that person that you have appointed. So really, really critical documents to have in place: healthcare directive and the power of attorney. So now what I would like to do too is just to give you a very general information on kind of the rest of your estate plan and how you will want to, like I said, minimize hassle for your family. So people think, for some reason, they think only like rich people need a plan. Honestly, it's really the family dynamics that drive the plan more than the assets. I mean, yes, there can be complex assets, but typically it's the family dynamics. And so you want to be thinking about, who will manage the estate. That's got to be a really well organized person. Honestly, it doesn't even really have to be a person that lives here, because they could hire someone, to handle the house or personal property, but just a very well organized person. If you have a blended family, so when we have second marriage and kids from the first marriage, that can get really, really complicated uh, because our traditional kind of beneficiary designations, or what people are thinking of, that may not work out the way you think it's going to work out. So those are people who really have more of a complex, family dynamics that really will be driving a more comprehensive plan. People that have special needs beneficiaries, whether it's, someone, a family member with a disability, or maybe it's a family member, who has substance abuse issues, we are able to, put some structure around any potential inheritance. And you want to be thinking about that if that is something that's in your family that needs specific attention. And then I put on here, people rarely think about the what ifs. And that's kind of what we do day in and day out is we're kind of anticipating on what could happen. Our job is to minimize risk. So very often people are not thinking about what happens if a child has passed away before you or, some other, many times people are thinking, especially the husband is like, I'm going to die first. And so, I mean, you really just don't know. So we really need to be planning, for the unexpected as well. So I would like to also give you just some familiarity with what kind of expenses we want to try to avoid. We're really trying to minimize expenses and taxes. And the big expense we definitely want to avoid is the cost of a probate. So many people think, oh, I have a will, so I'm not going to go through probate. And that's not the case at all. Probate is determined by how the assets are titled. I want you to be thinking about it as people are concerned about who has liability, right? So somebody passes away and they've got $100,000 in the bank, and a child walks in and is like, oh, my dad died. Here's a death certificate, and I'm claiming this account. And the bank is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have no idea who's out there. You guys got to go to court and you got to get someone appointed from the court and come back in here with a certified document from the court. And now I can talk with you about it. So I just really want you to have this appreciation for the fact that we really want to avoid probate because it's usually about like $6,000 just for a minimum probate. And probate is very public. Unfortunately, all the documents are available online now. So that's really not good to have the names and addresses and how much somebody just inherited by, some guy in his basement somewhere. So we really do want to avoid probate. And we can avoid probate by having beneficiaries on assets or having a trust. I'll tell you, when someone dies, the will is not the first thing that I look at. So I'm looking at beneficiary designations because those go off the table. So I just want you to know, like, generally why we want to avoid probate and how we can avoid probate. That's what you want in your estate plan. And then very, very briefly, just talk about, minimizing taxes because we have an estate tax in Minnesota. And so if you need to minimize estate tax, we're going to have a plan in place for that. And then I also want to make sure everyone is aware that making gifts to charities is a great way to reduce tax. You can reduce, estate tax by leaving assets to charity upon your passing, and you can reduce income tax by obviously donating to charity during your lifetime, but also at death. Boy, those IRAs, those are going to be taxable to the beneficiaries as well. So if you have any charitable intent, it is very, very tax efficient to leave those assets. Those are all taxable assets. Leave them to a charity and the charity will get the full amount. So then I just want to give you some ideas. These are just some tips, related to your estate plan. You want to confirm all your beneficiary designations just so that it's going exactly, those assets are going exactly where you want them to go. You can leave a list for distribution of personal property for your in Minnesota, which is a really, really nice thing. I mean, you don't have to, but let's just say you wanted a certain item to go to a certain person. Doesn't even have to be in a will. Just has to be in a signed and dated statement. My personal recommendation is I like people giving things during lifetime that have special meaning because then they can tell the story of the item with the property. I think that that's much more helpful to the person receiving it. And so we talked about, consider a living trust. Also, what can help your family is to maintain your, financial data in a place where that family member can find it. Where you have your checking, where you have your savings, where these assets are located. So that takes a lot of stress. And then, of course, kind of the new big stress now is dealing with, anything that's like a digital asset. Honestly, it's going to be more and more complicated for us to find out information from people because before, back in the day when I started, we could just look at the mail. to find out where their assets were. And obviously now we really need access to someone's email. We really need to know where the assets are because statements are coming through email, invoices are coming through email. So you should consider maybe like a password manager. They can handle all of your passwords, and then that one person just needs to know your one, master password. I don't mind at all when people write out their, login information. I realize you are not supposed to log in as someone else. That is, frowned upon. But honestly, that is the easiest way to do it. Now, we also have now um, a document that you would sign that would allow the person who's appointed with the power of attorney or the person who is appointed as your executor to access your electronic records. So we do have a form now that addresses it. But honestly, because it's kind of a new area, I can see how that's going to still cause some hurdles when we're trying to access that data. So I'm hoping that you get from this some ideas and just to be thinking about what you should have in place. I put this last slide up there because for whatever reason, there are a lot of reasons, but there really isn't a good reason for not having this in place. Many times people are thinking that they, like I said, need it to be perfect, or this is just like a taboo subject and they just don't want to think about it. Well, I'm here to say that you really need to just address it head on, talk about it with your family, get the documents in order, put it on the shelf, and not have to be, awaken at 3 a.m. thinking, I got to get my stuff together, or I'm going on a trip tomorrow. I got to get my stuff together. So just get it together now, and everyone's calm. There's no need to, get it done quickly. We're all in this together, as Red Green says, if anybody remembers Red Green. So, so I know I really zipped through that, but I know we have so much more to talk about. So thank you very much for listening.
Well, and Judy, thank you. And I neglected to introduce you because we were doing things out of order. But Judy is a local estate planning attorney, and I would say expert. And really, the key word there is planning. And she is so amazing at being planful and thoughtful. And it's just, we're blessed to have her. She's a member of our board of trustees, and we're thankful to her for sharing us today. I see Dr. Cragen's PowerPoint, so I am going to cede the mic and say, welcome back, Dr. Cragen. We're happy you're back with us. So Dr. Cragen, I think you're on mute. We can see your PowerPoint, but we can't hear you. So one more.
Okay. All right, here we go. We all
We
set?
got it. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Okay, so here's what the book looks like. Now, the book, interestingly, has also been published in China, because in China, there's a tremendous interest in end of life. And surprisingly to me, my photograph playing the piano was on the book. And I am told that the two most popular faces in China are Taylor Swift and me. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'm hearing. So as Judy mentioned, this is what we have to do today. This is not a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. So let's just briefly touch on in 5 seconds. Hospice and palliative care. I am convinced that there's no one in the galaxy that understands this. Okay, palliative care refers to the management of symptoms and concerns, regardless of where a patient is in their wellness trajectory. For example, let's suppose you have heart failure. You're in the hospital, the heart people are doing their thing, but you're having symptoms from the medicine, nausea, vomiting, numbness, and tingling. The palliative care people come in early in your illness and focus on the nausea and the vomiting. The heart people do their thing. Hospice is a whole different ballgame. This is quality of life and well-being for individuals whose expected survival is about 6 months. About. It's not a rigid number. And I think many families don't understand this, and the patient then doesn't get the care that they need and they deserve. Okay. So let's talk about briefly palliative care anywheres in your illness. Hospice care is only during the last 6 months of life. Now, let me tell you how I first got exposed to this. In 1996, I get a phone call from a lawyer in New Jersey. He said, "Doc, you got a problem." And the problem was my mother's second husband. I'll spare you all the details. He was in the bloodiest battles in World War II, returned to New Jersey, had a couple of bucks, and bought a bar and 2 liquor stores. Okay. He then dies at an inner city hospital, no hospice, no end of life. And the lawyer told me to come to New Jersey because there was a big piggy bank of lots of money that nobody paid taxes on. So that was the first problem. The second problem, I was then introduced to a woman whom I never knew existed. This was a stepsister whom I had met once 40 years ago. So this was the epitome of a legal nightmare. And I didn't realize how vulnerable I was until I sought competent legal advice. So this is not what you want to do on Super Bowl Sunday. You want to do this up front in the light of day. Okay. So let me tell you a story. This is my arm, skinny little arm. Notice the date here, May 14th, 2024. So why should you care? Well, about a half a mile from where this meeting is being held, I had a near-death accident. I lost consciousness for about 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I went across Elton Hills Drive and plowed into a brick building as part of a shopping center. Okay? You can't make this up. And I had the presence of mind, as I heard the bricks pounce off the car, to turn off the ignition, get my cell phone, and mercifully, the door opened. I was then surrounded by a dozen people who left the barbershop, as well as the SWAT team, the bomb squad, and the paramedics. People thought a bomb went off. So the paramedics put me in the ambulance, and they basically said, "You know, pal, you may not make it. You may not make it. Bring me to St. Mary's, where I'm in the Surgical Bay area." And 4 women trauma nurses came in who were just angels. And they said, "Doc, this looks bad. Who do you want us to call?" But at that moment, there was an element of comfort because Peggy and I had been through about 30 hours of these legal financial acrobatics. Because as Judy mentioned, everything is password coded. I have some international stuff. There's copyrights, there's advanced directives, all sorts of stuff. But at least I knew that if I didn't make it, all she had to do was one phone call and she would stop this nightmare. But for those of us who haven't done this, it's an absolute crisis for the grieving widow or the grieving spouse. This is a really big deal. This happened 1:40 in the afternoon. And if you remind me in a couple of minutes, I'll tell you what happened. So, Judy mentioned, who decides for us if we can't decide? Do you want a group of masked people in paper gowns deciding? No, we want someone who loves and cares about us. So in my world, my running partner, my best friend, the best cook in the world is Peggy. Okay. So she signed all the documents. We have them in our medical records. If for some reason Peggy is not available, her brother Michael takes over. He's a retired anesthesia person from Edina. So these people are written down. They know my values. So the healthcare directives, and Judy, you can help me with this, a multi-part thing. It's the agent, it's the proxy. That's a living human being. It's not a bot, it's not a robot, it's not artificial intelligence. What treatment preferences do I want if I can't decide for myself? We all know we are in the shadow of the greatest healthcare delivery system in the world, and we can be kept going for a long time. And it's a good idea to write this stuff down because nobody remembers anything. So here's my Mayo Clinic directive, okay? And every one of us should have something like this that's riveted into our Mayo Clinic record. I understand that my healthcare providers are legally bound to act consistent with my wishes, okay? Black and white. It's also clear, somebody said at the end of the world, two things are going to be left, Keith Richards and cockroaches. But he's not going to live to be 100. He thinks he is. And here's Peggy. She's in charge, okay? So we also have riveted into our advanced directive, if I'm in the hospital on day 20, that's not a good sign. That means they can't figure it out. It means you ain't going to get better. So in our advanced directive, it clearly states, if I'm in the hospital on day 20, I want nothing done. Disconnect me from all the equipment because I'm not going to get better. Now, artificial intelligence, I put in advanced directives just out of curiosity. Here's the living will. It's the medical treatments a person wants to receive or avoid at the end of life, spelled out. And the second document indicates that surrogate decision maker, who speaks for us, who knows our values. So Lord forbid, any one of us could be going home today and something bad happens, as it did to me 7 months ago. So if this stuff is not written down, your family will be saddled for the rest of your life, and they will get even with you in the afterlife. Hopefully, we all meet in the afterlife. Now, as Judy mentioned, Lake Wobegon, the All-American family, does not exist. You may walk into the room and you think this is Donnie and Marie. It ain't, because there's mixed marriages. You have adult stepchildren who don't even know each other. If there's assets or collectibles, this is a nightmare. So many of these people don't even know each other. They have hidden agendas. If there's corn futures, I don't know what it is, but you can lose a lot of money. If there's horses, if there's cattle, if there's Bitcoin, if it's not written down, it's not the start of a good weekend. Okay. Now, every institution has a booklet, Advanced Healthcare Planning. Mayo has these are free. It tells you what to do. If I can't speak for myself, what do I want? Okay. Do I want everything done to prolong my life? Because we can do it. Or they're going to prolong my life, but then they're going to stop it. So spell it out, or we can be on a respirator forever. Advanced directive, and help me with this, Judy. Who's that person? Who's that individual that will speak for us, a living human being? And what medical treatments do we want? But I knew at St. Mary's Hospital, they would do the right thing. But if I was not going to make it, I knew that Peggy would be cared for the rest of her life. Okay. What are the measures that I don't want? I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want to wind up on a breathing machine. I don't want mechanical respiration. If we don't spell it out, we're all people of prominence. We live in this community. We're well known, and it'll be a full court press unless we intervene. So 3 keys to the kingdom: the agent, the proxy, who speaks for us, what treatment preferences do we want, and a written document. The other issue I'm becoming aware of is that every state is different. Every county is different. So if you're a snowbird, find out what's going on. So as I mentioned, the future, we need to do this today, not in the ED under the glare of the monitor. That's not a good way to start advanced planning. Keep in mind my email address. You may have questions, you may have concerns, and I'd like to hear from you. Here's Instagram and here's our website. And we won't talk about TikTok because that's another complex problem. So it's a gift to be here. Those of you on chat, please introduce yourselves because we're all in the same bucket. And I speak on this, and I'm astonished at the misinformation, and I'm astonished at how toxic families have become because we've lost that sense of community.
Dr. Ed, thank you. And I'm glad we got through our technical difficulties. This is the world we live, the age we live in, which is wonderful that it can bring us all together, but it's only wonderful when it works seamlessly. So
But I have to tell you, I have become bulletproof because I'm convinced there are gremlins in our world that come in here and confiscate everything and basically make these things unworkable. So thank you. Thank you.
That does happen sometimes. Well, again, as Dr. Ed said, please put some information into the chat if you have questions. I am going to introduce our next presenters. We have Starla Inman and Lori Wasek, who will share more with us about Southeast Minnesota Area Agency on Aging's Senior Linkage Line. Starla is a licensed social worker who has worked on the linkage line for more than 10 years. She's responsible for answering a large variety of questions they receive regarding Medicare, long-term care options, counseling, and connecting older adults and their care partners to available community resources. Lori is a licensed social worker, also working with older adults and caregivers in Southeast Minnesota for over 25 years. And for the past 14 years, she has worked at the Southeast Minnesota Area Agency on Aging, say that fast 5 times, and supervises the resource coordination team of the Senior Linkage Line. And Lori and Starla, welcome. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Starla. I'm going to kind of go through a few slides, but mostly some stories. But in order to start, I just want to echo what Judy and Dr. Cregan are saying about planning, right? Because that is the crux of everything. And oftentimes when we leave families without those conversations, it just exacerbates how hard things can be to navigate and the systems that we have. But we are here to help. One of the services through the Minnesota Board on Aging is called the Senior Linkage Line, and our phone number is up on the screen here. I'm going to flip through the slides. I want to encourage people that when you call that 800 number, or if you are providing that to a family member or a friend that has questions about what services might be available before we need palliative care, before we need a hospice referral, what's out there, how do I plan for aging? If you call that 800 number, you are always going to reach somebody in the state of Minnesota. And I think that that's really important for people to know. There's so many scams and people trying to get information from people that are vulnerable and have a lot of questions. It's just something I want you to know, that this is a safe 800 number to call. We do have a page at mn.gov. It's /senior-linkage-line if you want to read about us. I think the line has been around for almost 25 years, might be a little less than that. And we are an information resource. So while we are not coming out to provide the ride to the doctor's appointment or provide the housekeeping service, we are connecting people to the community services that are available. And sometimes there's not community services. Unfortunately, that's reality. And so we'll kind of talk about what then. But our contact centers are kind of color coded here, but I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that when you use that 800 number, you will get somebody in the state of Minnesota. Our service is an information service for any Minnesotan or their caregiver, and our service is free, so there's no charge to speak with us. We are neutral and objective. Sometimes that is a sticking point for folks that get a little upset by that. They want us to tell them the best service provider or the best insurance company. That is not something we're allowed to do. It is against all policies that we have. So just know that what we're going to be able to provide is information, and most importantly, that conversation about what you're looking for, and maybe some strategies as far as questions to ask or things that you should be thinking about in regards to how do I stay at home? How do I age in place? How do I plan for being in my home as long as possible? There's some little things here of the different types of things we help with. So a good example or story that I can share about something in this vein would be after Christmas, we get a lot of calls because people have gone home. They've saw mom or dad, and they're a little bit surprised at how difficult life has gotten for them. Maybe the house is messier than they're used to seeing it. Mom's thinner, meds aren't filled, or mom's making a comment that she can't afford to keep the house warmer than whatever temperature, or, you get these inkling that something's not quite right. right? And so a lot of times in the beginning of January, the linkage line is flooded with a lot of calls saying like, hey, I was home. I don't know what to do. My mom is really struggling. She's not making it to her appointment. She doesn't feel safe driving anymore. Her house is unmanageable. It's too large. She's not cleaning it, and she's losing weight. So some of the things we would start to talk about are some of the transportation options. In Rochester, we have the ZIPS mobility paratransit bus. It does require things like an application and a certification from a physician, but it's an option that people can try to access to try to make those appointments, getting to appointments easier. We happen to be lucky to have both Elder Network and Family Service Rochester in our communities. They have some transportation programs through volunteer driver programs. And there's another national agency called GoGo Grandparent that if you don't have a landline, or sorry, if you don't have a smartphone or don't feel comfortable using apps, they help to connect you to Uber and Lyft rides for on-demand service. So there are a lot more options than you have to own a car, you have to be able to drive to make your life work for you. For housing, we might start talking about like the realistic conversation of is it really a good idea to remain at home? Nobody can decide that but the person themselves. But sometimes it's worth having a conversation about what would it look like if I did stay home alone? Who calls for help if I fall? What about an emergency pendant? Have you considered a smartwatch or any of the technology that has those detection options in them? Um, would you be comfortable putting in some type of technology where you can FaceTime each other on demand from the outside and check in on mom? For food, we might be talking about how about Meals on Wheels? That is such an underutilized, beautiful option to get seniors, number one, an in-person visit face to face with an individual dropping off a warm meal and nutrition. Um, it's just a great service in our community of Rochester. Family Service Rochester is the provider of the Meals on Wheels program. So again, sometimes a family member from Duluth or from California would have no idea who does that, what is that called? And if you haven't worked in senior services, there's a lot of acronyms and things that are really difficult to understand and put together. What does that mean for my person? And that's where we would come into place, is those conversations and helping to connect to resources. Some of the primary transitions that we do work with, we are the federal designated SHIP, which is State Health Insurance Information and Assistance Program. So anytime it's a Medicare open enrollment time period, or it's the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period right now from January 1 to March 31st, we have a lot of people that have been on Medicaid, or medical assistance is what we call it in Minnesota, through their county. And as COVID emergencies have ended, people are losing benefits and they don't know what to do next. Those are all appropriate referrals or appropriate contacts to us, and we will help them communicate with the county to see what the issue is. Are they over income? Are they over assets? What are the other options we can look at? And, just unbiased, neutral information about what's out there. Medicare is not your long-term care insurance. It's incredibly difficult to learn that when you start to need home and community-based services. It is not a long-term care policy. It does not provide coverage for that. There are specific instances when in-home care is covered by Medicare, but it is not across the board, and it is not a long-term care policy. So it is something that we need to consider, because anytime we start looking at government programs, which we can help people screen for, but we cannot put you on them, we can guide you through the process. They are always looking at income and assets. What do you have available to see if you're qualified for programs? And it's a very confusing time, and it's hard for even the most seasoned people to manage this on their own. So we would encourage people to call in times of transition. Supporting a loved one. There's a lot of caregiver stress. I was a caregiver for my spouse who passed away at 41 from ALS. So we did the home renovations for accessibility for a power chair and a standard split. We did the estate planning. We worked with hospice. We went through that gamut, and that was incredibly difficult for me as a caregiver. And every time you talk to any sort of caregiver groups, they always tell you to make sure you take care of yourself. which feels so impossible at that time. But I'm here to tell you, it's incredibly important to connect to support groups, to take care of yourself, because as Lori can attest to with her team's experiences, many times the caregiver passes first, and there's just a lot of stress on that individual. So we need to be thinking about having conversations with family members. What do we want, and how can we step in and help caregivers, because it's an incredibly difficult job. We do help anybody in Minnesota on prescription cost options. Sometimes that's as simple as looking at coupons. So there's nothing magic we're doing that isn't something you can find. But if you don't know where to look and you don't know where to trust as far as a website or a coupon code or something, you can always call and ask, because we do help anybody with that. And then part of our role with the state SHIP is that we handle the senior Medicare patrol dollars, which is fraud concerns. So we do try to help folks that are concerned that maybe they got the phone call that they were going to replace a Medicare card with a chipped card and they gave all their information away. That is not true. That is not happening. Those paper Medicare cards are legitimate. There are not chip cards coming out. But there's a lot of scammers out there, and sometimes people need to be reassured. If they did something wrong, how do I protect myself? If they, had an actual, that was a real phone call from somewhere, sometimes they just want someone to call with them and inquire on things with 1-800-Medicare. And that's also something we can do. We do have partners. We cannot do this work alone. We do have a specialty with older adults and Medicare, but we rely heavily on our partners through the Southeast Minnesota Center for Independent Living, who have the Disability Hub. And they're very much similar to Senior Linkage Line, where there are different call centers in Minnesota that answer that line. But if you're under 65 or your loved one is 25 with autism and you need to know what kind of disability services are available to a person in that situation, they're an awesome group, an organization to work with. Again, they're not providing the direct service like Senior Linkage Line. We're an information resource, but we're trying to help connect you to the options that exist in your area. And then we also have a Veterans Linkage Line. In addition to the Veterans Linkage Line, we have in Minnesota, every county has a county veterans service officer. So if you are a family member of a service member or you are a veteran yourself, they are incredibly helpful. And sometimes people will just call us to find out what the phone number is for the county veterans service officer in St. Louis County or Hennepin or whatever. And that's okay too. It can be very simple. I need to know who to talk to about X. Fine. It could be a longer conversation of, I don't know how to talk to my mom about moving to assisted living. I don't know how to access services because she can't afford to pay for it. What are the steps? That kind of thing. And when they get really complicated, the line staff, who is phone only, we're going to refer it to my lovely colleague Lori's team, and they have a group of what are called resource coordinators who do a little bit more intensive work and service help for older adults. So I will leave it to her next.
Perfect. Thank you, Starla. Again, as Starla mentioned, we are part of Senior Linkage Line, the resource coordination team. And we're a varied group of very experienced and well-trained individuals with backgrounds in social work and nursing, hospital discharge, long-term care, occupational therapy, just coming from very different perspectives. We are an extension of Senior Linkage Line, kind of focusing more on times of transition and providing that more comprehensive and ongoing support. It could be transition from hospital returning back home. It could be you've been in a nursing home for a rehab stay and you're returning back home. We also really try to focus and specialize on aging in place and helping individuals who just want to remain in their home access other supports and resources. Things change over time. They might need something different now that they didn't before. So we really try to look at that by taking a look at all of the things, a very person-centered approach, looking at not only the individual's medical needs, but their social life, their home environment, any caregivers, what equipment do they need? We also look at, programs and finances, often connecting to Starla and the folks answering Medicare questions. So really trying to take a look at the whole picture with a goal of keeping that person living in the community in the setting of their choice for as long as they would like to. Our service can be accessed in a variety of ways. We typically work with individuals 60 years or older. That's not always the case, but typically that is what it is, and not yet on county programs. And the reason for that is usually when you're on a county program, you have a designated case manager or a care coordinator or someone to help you navigate the process. The folks that we assist don't have that designated person, so we're hoping to be able to fill that niche and provide that assistance when possible. We work together, we formulate a plan, looking at all of their questions, the needs, the concerns, and then we start figuring out how can we make this work. That can look like finding the service in the community, estimating how much it's going to cost, figuring out how they're going to pay for that, calling the agencies to check on availability, talking to the pharmacy about different things, or that medical equipment provider, and then setting it up, making those referrals and setting it up. The other kind of unique piece of what we do is we do provide the option for ongoing follow-up. So we can certainly do a one and done sort of situation, but we really hope to establish those longer term relationships and provide check-in calls with individuals over a long period of time to really try and ensure a successful stay in their home. We do this phone-based. We do this as an in-person visit, just kind of really basing it on the client's preference. Some of the other things that we look at, it could be setting up home health. It could be setting up therapy coming into the home. It could be, like Starla mentioned, working on transportation, caregiver support, looking at programs, financial assistance programs that are out there that they never knew even existed, and checking for eligibility, energy assistance programs, just anything under the sun. We really try to help out where we can. We do get referrals from the call center, so the 800 number when people call and talk to Starla's team, and they will forward them on to us. And we also have referrals that come in directly from nursing homes and hospitals and clinics, assisted living providers, hospice providers, home health care, and then individuals and families can refer themselves. And one of the ways to do that is through our online referral site, which Starla has on the screen right now, the slreferral.org. Just clicking on the Help for Older Adults referral section. Very, very simple to do. It's easy for us to kind of talk about all the things that we do, and we of course think it's an invaluable service, but it's very impactful to show an example of that. So we do have a short video if we have time for that. If not, we'll share the link and you can certainly watch that on your own. But this is an example of a client that we did assist.
So Lori, we are just up against the edge of our time. And we were also having audio issues earlier, but I did already put that in the chat.
Excellent,
so
thank
that
you.
everybody, hopefully, just before we head off, we'll be on for another minute or so. But click on it, open it up. It is a very powerful video. So I just want everybody to take a few minutes. I think it's not just shy of 6 minutes long. So be well worth your time. I want to thank Dr. Cragen, Judy, Starla, Lori, all of you for making the time to be with us today, sharing your time and your talents. It's a very important subject, and there was a powerful testimonial in the chat from Eileen about how, having gone through this, it's really important. And the more you can do in advance for yourself, for a spouse, a partner, a sibling, a parent, the more you can do in advance and get those things organized, the easier it will be for all of those that you care about when the time comes. And I really appreciate the fact that maybe that's as someone who it's hard to think about, but if I could put it in my brain, like, well, I might not want to have this conversation, but you know what? It's going to make it much easier for my loved ones. Well, you know what? Then that's maybe reason enough to have that conversation. So Again, thank you very much to each of you. We will do some more lunch and learns throughout the year, so we're always open to ideas if there's something you'd love to learn more about. But again, thank you to each of our presenters. We were so happy to have you, and we look forward to seeing hopefully all of you for our regularly scheduled programming, Coffee and Conversation on February 5th, 9 a.m. We hope to see you then. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.